My name is Priscilla Matten. I'm the superintendent of Bristol County Mosquito Control, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about West Nile virus and mosquito information in general. Bristol County Mosquito Control services all 20 towns within Bristol County, Massachusetts, and our mission statement to the communities that we serve is to try to reduce the amount of mosquitoes to a tolerable level in the most environmentally and economically sensitive manner that we can. So we use a variety of different methods to do that, and our goal is really to prevent and minimize any potential effects from our applications or the things that we do. So some of the services that we provide to the residents of Bristol County are mosquito virus surveillance. So this is what you're hearing now because of all the EEE activity. We have mosquito traps in all 20 towns, and we go and we collect mosquitoes and we check them for West Nile virus and EEE through the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And we use that information to then have the state give us a risk level change or tell us what's going on with mosquitoes in our area. We also have a light trapping program, and this is for monitoring adult populations because it's really important for us to know when we're making a pesticide application what mosquitoes are out there and whether or not they're a risk to human health. We produce just both spring larvicide as well as summer larvicide. So this is where we treat standing water in order to kill the mosquitoes before they come out. And we have some mosquito larvae here so you know what to look for. And that is done throughout all 20 cities and towns. In the summer, we do catch basin treatment. So these are the storm drains along the sides of the road. And this is really important to help stop emergence of mosquitoes from these areas because this mosquito is important for West Nile virus. Not so much for EEE, but West Nile virus is important as well. And we're starting to get some activity for that in the area. One of the services we provide during the summer is ground-based ULV or truck applications for adulticiding to help kill the mosquitoes that are already become adults and that are flying around. And this is one of the things you probably know us most for because we do this all summer long from basically Memorial Day to Labor Day. In the winter, we focus a lot on water management since mosquitoes need to live in stagnant water. We go out and we help to clean ditches and roadside areas in order to keep that water flowing so that way we're not producing standing water for mosquitoes to use in the spring and in the summer. And then of course public outreach, like having the ability to come out to the library today and talk to everybody. So why are mosquitoes important? Well, here in Massachusetts, we have West Nile virus and EEE, or Eastern equine encephalitis. Dog heartworm is also transmitted by mosquitoes. And of course, in different areas, there is all these other mosquito-borne diseases like Zika, dengue, chikungunya, malaria, which we don't have here, but we can get travel-related cases. We'll touch briefly on that, but mostly we'll focus on West Nile virus and EEE. So in Massachusetts, there's actually 53 different species of mosquitoes. And of those 53 mosquitoes, only the female bites, and she must take her blood meal in order to lay her eggs. But not all mosquitoes bite humans, not all bite mammals, not all bite birds. It's very variable of the 53. So of those 53, when we're concerned about virus, whether it's West Nile virus or EEE, we're really focused on about 13 species of real importance. All of the mosquitoes have to make it through the winter. They hibernate. Some hibernate as eggs, some as larvae, and some as adults. And this is important as we start to look at the mosquito life cycle as well as we look at the mosquito diseases that they can pass. So looking at the mosquito life cycle, there are two types of eggs that are a mosquito's lay. One that goes directly on top of the water, and if the water dries down, the mosquito eggs die. So those are the best. The other type, the one in the middle, is actually desiccant resistant eggs. Those eggs have to dry down and then get wet again through a subsequent rain event, or you filling up your kiddie pool or your bird bath. And when it fills up again, it causes the eggs to hatch. Because those eggs are able to dry down, they can actually live in the environment for up to 5 years before they hatch. So not all the eggs hatch at once. And because of this, this is when years like this, where we're getting multiple little rain events as we experienced tonight, we're flooding up some areas and hatching off more and more eggs. So it's important for a lot of the mosquitoes diseases that we have that these eggs last so long in the environment. Mosquito larvae, they live in water, so they have to have standing water that's not very deep, because they need to be able to go all the way down to the bottom of the water to filter feed, but then again all the way to the top of the water in order to take air. So they breathe air, they don't breathe through the water. So when you're looking at areas and worrying about whether mosquitoes could breed in it, really deep water is not going to get mosquito larvae, and water that's moving also won't get mosquito larvae. And that's mostly because the pupal stage, which is when that larvae is changing into the adult, when he or she cracks open her shell in order to emerge from the water as an adult, if it's wavy, she'll end up falling over, and then she won't be able to fly because her wings will get wet and they won't be able to take off. So still water is very, very important for mosquitoes as well. So the female and the male will emerge from the water, and this cycle takes anywhere from 10 days when it's really, really hot to a couple of months in the early spring. So this whole thing can take a while. And in Massachusetts, eggs, larvae, and adults are ways that our mosquitoes overwinter. So when we're looking for larval habitat, we're looking for areas where we, as Bristol County Mosquito Control, will find mosquito larvae. We're looking for these large areas, these wooded swamps, so the spring swamps that come from the melting snow pools. We're looking for cattail marshes. We're looking for floodwater areas of fresh water. We could be looking at salt marshes if we lived closer to the coast. And then the cedar swamp crypts are very important. So here in Easton, the cedar swamp is our primary area where we're getting the mosquitoes that are necessary for Eastern equine encephalitis, because we have the great Hockomock Swamp Complex. So we look at all of these areas and try to do water management if we can, or try to larvicide and adulticide in those areas. But what we would like residents to do is look for those backyard breeding sites right in their own yard. So maybe you didn't maintain your pool this year and it's got some water. Maybe you left the cover on and the water is sitting on top of the cover. You can get some mosquito larvae. Tires are a great place for mosquito larvae. There's no way to put a tire outside that's not going to hold water. Whether it's standing straight up and down or laying flat, it always holds water. Your bird baths, your buckets, your gutters, the extendy strips that you put now at the bottom of your gutters, they all hold water. They're all good for mosquito larvae. So you want to look at those and dump them out about every 3 to 5 days in order to help reduce the mosquitoes that are probably going to bite you right in your own backyard. So what do mosquitoes eat? Well, all mosquitoes need to take nectar in order for flying, but only the female bites, and she needs that blood in order to lay her eggs. And why is this important? Of our 53 mosquito species, some will feed on amphibians only, some will only feed on birds, some will feed on both birds and mammals, some will only feed on mammals, and it's through the information that we know about the mosquito that we can make decisions on whether or not it's a risk to us for different diseases. So it's important to know that different mosquitoes will feed on different things. How far does a mosquito fly? So this year we'll be looking at the risk map for EEE, and what we'll notice is that neighboring towns where maybe no activity is taking place, they'll still be at a higher level maybe than our own town that we live in, or we'll be in critical because of activities that have taken place. Mosquitoes can fly for miles. So unless it's your backyard breeder, that probably isn't going to go much more than a mile. Most of our mosquitoes can easily fly 5 to 10 miles without any issue. And this is where this town versus that town can get very confusing. And habitat that crosses across towns like the Hockomock Swamp, which is partially in Bristol County and in Plymouth County, you know, mosquitoes will fly back and forth. And that's why risk maps from the Department of Public Health can get so big. And this is also why we try to make sure that people know that even if there's not a positive mosquito right in your backyard, the risk is still there for disease. So at Bristol County Mosquito Control, we conduct surveillance within the 20 cities and towns in Bristol County. And surveillance is important because we need to know what species is out there to know if it's a health risk. We also want to know the number of mosquitoes are out there because they can become a nuisance. And this helps us make our decisions when we're making applications, whether it's a pesticide application, a water management. And what we do is we use a variety of different traps to look for different diseases. And the traps look for different types of mosquitoes as well as different stages of the mosquito. So some traps, like the gravid trap, is looking for a mosquito that's already taken a blood meal, and she's looking to lay her eggs. She's gravid or full of eggs. So she has more of a chance of being exposed to a virus at this point. So that gives us that type of information versus a CDC light trap, which is using CO2 to attract the mosquito. So that's looking for a mosquito that's looking for a blood meal. So maybe they haven't had a blood meal yet, or maybe they have and they're looking to transmit the virus back. So we look for different things depending on what kind of trap we're using and what kind of mosquito we're looking for. So we're going to talk a little bit about West Nile virus because it is important for here in Massachusetts and in Easton, and we are starting to see some activity from mosquitoes that we have collected. So for all of our mosquito diseases that we have here in Massachusetts, which is West Nile virus and Tripoli, they all have a bird mosquito cycle. It always starts that way. The bird has it, gives it to a mosquito, the mosquito gives it to another bird, that bird gets bit by more mosquitoes, and then they give it to more birds, and the cycle just happens. And that always happens, and it's always happening every year. It's when we get a bridge vector or one of those odd mosquitoes that is less likely to only bite one thing, whether it's a bird or a mammal, but willing to feed on whatever it finds, that passes off the virus onto other things like humans or horses or goats or llamas or alpacas or whatever else it may find. And it's these bridge vectors that we have to watch for also. So first we tend to get it in the mosquito vector, which is the bird biter, knows that something's going on, and then when it pops out to the bridge vectors, we know we can now have incidental infections. So humans and horses are incidental infections. The virus cannot build up in their bodies enough to transmit it back to another mosquito. So there's no issue if you live next to somebody that happens to have a horse that has Tripoli. It's not like the horse is going to infect all the mosquitoes in your area. That's not how that works. It's a dead end host after. You can't build up enough virus in the body of the horse or the humans and most other animals. West Nile virus is not spread from person to person or human to animal contact, so you're fine if you again live in the area where something has gotten West Nile virus. However, we know that it got it from somewhere, so we know that there's mosquitoes in the area, so you do want to be careful about that. So West Nile virus for the majority of people is going to cause no symptoms. So less than 1% of the infected people will really develop significant symptoms. Most people might have very mild flu-like symptoms, and you won't even know that you have it. You might just feel achy for a couple of days, but only a small percentage gets the severe cases. There's no treatment for West Nile virus, so if you get it, they're only going to be able to treat the symptoms and give you care as best as they can. And certainly children, seniors, and compromised immune system people are the most likely to get higher, getting the encephalitis or the meningitis stages of West Nile virus. So that's the swelling of the brain or the spinal cord that can cause significant health effects or death. So it is a little bit different than Tripoli, which we'll talk about in a minute, where it's much more infectious. We do have some travel-related mosquito-borne illnesses that will come into Massachusetts, things that we might have heard about in the news lately, like Zika or dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, malaria. This is mostly you travel somewhere and you bring it back. The difference with these types of diseases is that they're all mosquito to person to mosquito to person, where a mosquito bites a person and then they give it to another person and they give it to another person. That's not true with West Nile virus or Tripoli. It only stays in the birds. People cannot transmit it back out. So it's much, much different with these diseases, and which is why there's these big outbreaks of things like Zika or dengue. Also in Massachusetts, we don't have the primary vector, which is Aedes aegypti. It does not exist here in Massachusetts. It's too cold right now, so we can't get the sustained activity if you go somewhere and come in contact with it. So the majority of the areas are in Central and South America, and in other areas, Puerto Rico and the Caribbean have had a lot of cases. So think of that when you travel. You want to be aware of what might be going on where you're traveling to. There were some limited cases of Zika in Texas and in Florida. 2 years ago. I don't think there's been any activity yet this year, but they do have the mosquito that's necessary. So it's something certainly to watch out for. So the CDC recommends that you don't get bit by mosquitoes if you have this virus, because you can transmit it back. A lot of the symptoms are the same with muscle joints and headaches and stuff like that. So if it travels somewhere, you're going to want to make sure that if you get sick, you let your doctor know that you have traveled to areas where some of these other diseases are present. So why do we have EEE? Why are we here today? Because we have a EEE outbreak. Culiceta melanura is the primary amplification mosquito, and in the map you can see all the dark areas are where we have their prime habitat, which is Atlantic white cedar swamps, Atlantic white cedar, red maple swamps, which is exactly the 2,000 plus acres of the Hockomock complex that sits right here in Easton and we share with Plymouth County. It is the perfect habitat, is actually the only habitat for this mosquito. And what they do is they live deep under the crypts of their tree roots, and they live deep down in there, and they overwinter as larvae, and the snow doesn't bother them, the ice doesn't bother them. They dig down deep into the muck, and they spend their whole winter, and come the next year, they emerge in the early spring, and that's how we can end up getting some outbreaks. Historically, Culiceta melanura has been primarily a bird biter, and we see this in the amplification of it. Recent evidence has shown maybe it can directly transmit, but it's very, very rare. So we're looking at this mosquito to get the cycle going. And when we have a lot of Culiceta melanura, we get a lot of EEE. And the past few years, so the last outbreak of EEE was roughly 2012, and the last few years has been very quiet. Well, we've had a drought, and a lot of the swamps have dried down. Certainly there's water way down in the crypts, but the majority of the water has not been there. And this mosquito can react very quickly when the water fills back up, and that's what we're seeing now. It's been a few years that we have not had a significant population of this mosquito, but now we do, and we have now seen Eastern equine encephalitis. So overall, EEE is very rare, but it's very serious. So there is usual symptoms again, fever, headache, stiff neck, flu-like symptoms. It can progress to that meningitis, encephalitis, and you're going to get about overall nationwide about a 33% mortality if you catch EEE. Massachusetts tends to have a higher mortality. We don't know why, but we do, and those that do survive tend to have debilitating health problems. There's no treatment again for EEE. So if you get EEE, they're just trying to help with the symptoms that you get. EEE has been present here in this area because of the Hockomock Swamp Complex for since 1938, and in 1958-59 it was because of another outbreak that ended up prompting us to form the Bristol County Mosquito Control Project. So this is just like the West Nile virus slide that I showed you for the cycle, just a little bit more complicated. So for EEE, we have our native birds that serve as the primary host for these mosquitoes. So things like house sparrows, chickadees, starlings, the robin, the American robin is probably our primary bird responsible for transmission of EEE. And you get the mosquito bird cycle going, and it goes and it goes, and it mostly stays in the woods, in the swamps, and everything is okay. It's when we get a high population of those mosquitoes that overwinter as eggs, and they get wet and they hatch, and we get high populations that they start feeding on whatever they can find, including infected birds, and we get those incidental infections. And so those are the things that we have to look out for, and those are the mosquitoes that we're looking for as well. So maybe why was this year a little bit different than other years? EEE in Massachusetts tends to be cyclical. So we tend to have outbreaks and then years of no activity, and then outbreaks and years of no activity. So it's very possible that this could be a first year of a 3-year cycle, or we could have a significant change in everything, and next year could be much different. But our last major cycle for EEE was in 2012. Then we had very little activity up until 2019. And why 2019? Partially Culicida melanura populations rebounded, so that was important. Also, we have new birds that have not been exposed to EEE since 2012, so they're naive, so they haven't been exposed. So when a bird gets infected with EEE, it becomes infectious for a short period of its life, roughly 3 days. It's able for a mosquito to bite it and pass on the virus. After those 3 days, it's just infected for the rest of its life, but doesn't cause a problem. When we don't have a lot of activity year after year after year, we get a lot of birds that are naive. They've never been infected, so you can build up very, very quickly into having a lot of birds that are now infected. And 3 days after you keep adding that on to more and more birds can can expand over months. So when we talk about the aerial application that just took place back a couple of weeks ago, August 8th to the 11th, the State Department of Public Health is planning another aerial application, which should get released to the public sometime today, if it hasn't already, which will probably start to take place sometime around Thursday of this year. I'm sorry, of this month. And the reason we're doing it again is sort of twofold. One is the product that we use is a synthetic pyrethroid. It has a quick knockdown. It knocks down the mosquito and it kills them right away. But new mosquitoes are emerging all the time. So one of the things you want to do is you want to knock down as many old mosquitoes as you can, give a chance for the population to come back up, but that population in this 10-day time frame is not going to have time to emerge, take a blood meal, maybe become infected, but not enough time to then go and infect something else. So we're going to try to cut the cycle again by this second application. It also gives the birds a chance, if we can reduce the biting pressure from the mosquito, we're going to give the birds a chance to get over their 3 days of being sick with EEE, and then hopefully when the mosquito comes back, all the population comes back from all this water we're getting, and they're re-emerging not with any virus, we're giving them a chance to then work that and not get the birds infected again, and hopefully halt this cycle to prevent any more human and horse cases. So in Massachusetts, we've now seen some activity directly from the Culicida melanura, but it's pretty rare, but something in a year like this year when we have so much activity to keep in mind as well. So historically, there have been some aerial sprays that have been done for EEE, well back in the 50s and 70s and 90s, and then more recently, 2006, where we did 2 applications, 2010, where we were able to complete 1 application because of the time of year, 2012, 2 applications, in 2019, we've completed 1 so far and plan on starting another one this week, potentially Thursday. And last 4 applications have taken place with Sumithrin, which again is a synthetic pyrethroid. Quick knockdown, low mammalian toxicity, so it's a good choice to be using for a EEE outbreak. So when the application is made either by me at Bristol County Mosquito Control or by the airplane, it's an ULV application. It's an ultra low volume application. Very tiny small droplets are going to come out, and it's a very low application rate. So we're talking 0.62 ounces per acre. So 0.62 ounces is less than a shot glass, and an acre is a football field. So it's very low rates of application, and that's whether it comes out of a plane or comes out of my truck as I'm driving down the street. The application rate doesn't change. So that's why this is a good product to use. You're not going to get doused if you happen to be outside when the plane goes by. Nothing's going to get soaking wet because it's a very, very low application rate. However, the mosquito has to come in contact with the product in order for it to kill it. So that's one of the reasons reasons why 2 applications is important. It gives us a better chance to kill more mosquitoes. Applications are made between sunset and sunrise. For the aircraft, it's probably going to be after 8 p.m. Until about 4:30 in the morning. And for our truck-based spraying, it's usually between 2 a.m. and sunrise is when we're out. And those times are set to target the mosquitoes' feeding period, right? So most of our mosquitoes are crepuscular, sunset and sunrise, and also to reduce non-target effects. So on average, bees are in their hive once the sun goes down. They're in their hive until the sun comes up. So we use that as one of the reasons for spraying at this time. Also, a lot of our visual flying insects like dragonflies, they don't fly at night because they need to see where they're going. So we reduce any sort of non-targets in that respect as well. Also, most of us are asleep or not outside during those times. So hopefully we're reducing any effects, though there were no effects from the previous application, and they don't expect any adverse effects from this application. Temperature is very important as we head into this week of August. I know it's very hot right now, but it could get cold, not less than 58 degrees. And that has nothing to do with the product. It has all to do with the mosquitoes flying. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. So if the plane goes up and it drops to 55, 56, they're going to have to cancel and start again. Not spraying the same place, but starting all over the next night. Not while raining. Again, mosquitoes are not really active. And wind speed varies. Airplane, they have to look at both where they're flying, which is about 100 feet above the treetops, and then when we're on the ground, we need a slightly lower wind speed. But when they're flying, they need to check to make sure the weather is good on the bottom and good on the top. So that's very important to remember. If you think it's a nice night come Thursday, but in the end we don't end up spraying, it's probably because there are some issues with the weather. This is our current risk map for Eastern equine encephalitis, red being critical and Easton is in critical. Norton just went critical with a positive animal case, Raynham, and then all of kind of our surrounding towns are up there in moderate or so. Southern Bristol County and Southern Plymouth County are in critical because of a human case that occurred in Southern Plymouth County just a few weeks ago. So we had the spray map that came up, and all the color in areas are areas that are in the spray zone for the last application, the 8th through the 11th. Today, this evening perhaps, or tomorrow, the new map should be up for the next aerial application. So when the map goes up, you'll be able to find it online, and I'm going to provide some information in here for websites that you can check out and look for more information, as well as the town's website, and my website will have information. So one of the questions we get a lot is why this random map, and I live in Easton, why not me in Easton, and why somebody else in Easton? And you can sort of see the hatched areas are where the spray took place, and then the other areas is where the spray did not take place. All of that is designed and developed by the Department of Public Health. So Bristol County Mosquito Control has nothing to do with the aerial application. We can help answer as many questions as we can, but we don't set up the maps, we don't conduct the surveillance, we conduct the surveillance, I'm sorry, but we don't do any of the operations for the actual aerial. So the state looks at the map and decides based on habitat, previous history, and mosquito species where they think that they should spray in areas that they should be in. Now, this is not official, but based on the information that we have, with Norton going critical, only a small area of Norton was sprayed the first time. They're probably going to include all of Norton, which makes me think that this line is going to come down here. So I believe more areas of Easton will be sprayed, but still certainly not the northern areas of Easton won't be sprayed. And the whole Hockomock complex sits right at the bottom area, where we still continue to get more cases of mosquitoes testing positive with EEE. So again, you know, the cities and towns of Bristol County don't get to decide which towns get sprayed or what gets sprayed. Bristol County Mosquito Control does not either. We just provide the data for our trap locations, and then the Mass Department of Public Health makes those decisions. So we want you to avoid mosquito bites, right? Because we're in a critical area. We don't want you to panic, but we want you to make sure that you understand that this is a serious illness. So you want to use the 5 Ds of protection: dusk, dawn, dress, deet, and drain. So avoid activity if you can between dusk and dawn, and then dress appropriately, long sleeves, long pants if you can. If you can't, then use a repellent, something like DEET, picaridin, oil of lemon eucalyptus, all approved by the federal EPA and the CDC. Permethrin is really great. It goes on your clothing, not on your body. You can find that in the camping section, whereas the regular repellents are usually more in the health and beauty side, but permethrin, which works great for ticks as well, as DEET does work for ticks as well. So permethrin's great if you have your gardening gloves or your gardening shoes, or maybe your clothes that you specifically wear. Maybe you take the dog for a walk in a specific outfit. Maybe you rake the leaves with a specific pair of gloves or a hat. It's good to spray that on your clothes when it's not on, let it dry, and then you can use it for multiple washes. It can last up to 6 weeks. And it's a really good thing to use, especially if you're not interested in putting on your repellents every time that you go outside. But you should be careful, because it really doesn't take long, unfortunately, for somebody to get bit by a mosquito. For West Nile virus, one of the infamous cases was the head of the CDC in Fort Collins, Colorado, who ended up getting West Nile virus because he walked out to his mailbox and ended up talking to his neighbor and got bit by a mosquito and came down with West Nile virus. So it can really happen quickly. So, be prepared with what you're doing and when you go outside. And then check those areas around your house that might be holding water and drain it. So get rid of the standing water. Either chuck it or check it. If you want to keep it, totally fine. You want to keep your bird bath, that's fine. Clean it out and dump it out every 3 to 5 days. If you've got flower pots and you don't want them anymore, just get rid of them. Look through your area and see what you see. If you have something that you want to keep, try to move it inside if you can to help it from getting full of water. So this came directly from the state's frequently asked questions, and I'll have a website up for the aerial information as well. We at both the Board of Health as well as me and Mosquito Control, we will really try to do everything to answer any residential questions that anybody has. However, I cannot stress enough that this just is not our application, and we don't really have any say about where it takes place, when it takes place, how it takes place. Information comes to both of us as quick as we can get it out to you. So when the big map comes up, so the map that I showed you originally of all those towns that were part of it was about 390,000 acres. And we can't tell you where they're going to start on Thursday. The pilots are going to decide based on the weather, based on how many pilots, do they have 2 planes? Do they have 1 plane? Where's the risk? Where do they want to start? Which way is the wind blowing? They're going to want to do it that way. So it's very difficult for us to give you any information before we know it. So the state will put up as much information as they can, like the map, but where they're going to be on what day, we don't know. So if you want to take any precautions, you have to do it either throughout the whole application or until you see the map come up that says that your area was done. So this is one area where you can find a lot of information, which is the mass.gov emergency response, which I'm hoping they're going to use the exact same email website that they used last time. The second one is my website. Mosquito results will give you the information about the mosquitoes testing positive in the areas, and then the State Reclamation and Mosquito Control Board from the Department of Ag that oversee us. They should have all the information. So you will find the frequently asked questions available on that emergency response. One of the main questions that we get is, what do I have to do during the aerial? And the answer is nothing. There are no precautions. You don't have to do anything. But of course, that doesn't sound good, right? Because nothing ever sounds good when you're like, you don't have to do anything. So what they did was they wrote, you don't have to do anything, But if you want to do something, then you can do this whole list of things that you don't have to do. So it's not really the best, but it is what it is. So some of the things that you can do would be like shutting your air conditioner off and putting it on recirculation, shutting your windows, you know, different things like that. If you want to do it. If you want to do it, you have to start on the first night, because we're not going to know when you get done. If you end up on a line of where they stopped and you're close to where they're going to start again, the next night you probably want to do it again. All of the products that we use or is being used in the aerial application, which is Anvil 10+10, can be found on the website. It has a food tolerance, which means that if you have your garden, you have your vegetables, there's no precautions you need to make for them. Most people probably take them in and wash them anyway, but there will be no residue left over on any of the gardens or vegetables or food that's out there. The map will include areas like that we won't be sprayed. Mostly they only include things like drinking water sources, but we also don't spray organic farms. We also don't spray other environmentally sensitive areas. Those might not be up on the map, but there will be random little areas that we won't be treating as well. But you can certainly find a lot of information that's up there. And this is my contact information that you can either call, you can email us. If you want to make a spray request, you can call our number and make a spray request for the ground application. We're in Easton usually once per week, but with all the activity, we've actually been in Easton twice per week. You can access our website to find out what streets are on the list for the next spray day. So it will list different towns and then different street names. We won't put your address, it'll just say your street. So you can get a lot of information there as well, and you can certainly call us. Information comes out as quick as we can get it to you, and sometimes things take a little bit longer than some people may want. But I'll turn it over to Kristen if she has anything to say, or I'll be happy to take any questions and answer any questions anybody has. And if you want to talk off camera later, then please let me know. And then Kristen brought some information in the back of the room about EEE and avoiding mosquito bites, repellents as well. Thank you.
Any questions? I'm more interested in, this is very concerning to me, but the thing that I don't want to put DEET on my body every day, and I know about the lemon eucalyptus, but I'm wondering if there's other things you can wash your body with or foods you can eat that would also help. Is that some of the stuff that you...
So what the recommendation is and what the fact sheet is are the EPA registered ones. They're going to be the ones that Priscilla had on her slide, not so much the untested.
Okay.
Yes.
That was interesting that you said that if a cardigan you spray for 6 weeks, I can wear that same sort of slip.
Yes.
My clothes, and I don't have to spray myself then.
Exactly, exactly. Remember, that'll only protect places that your clothes is covering. So, you know, your neck and your face and everything like that may not be protected. So you do want to be careful. You know, certain things like just being aware when you go outside and just making good choices. So you decide, because one of the things is, you know, it's very hot and I need to weed the garden. I'm not going to go out at 3 o'clock when I get out of work. I go out at dusk. Okay, I'll go out, and then when I see my first mosquito, which I know I could be bit by something else in the meantime, but when I start to see my mosquitoes, that's when I'm going to go in. If I'm sitting on the porch reading, I'll stay. When I start to see the mosquitoes, I'm going to go. So just being perceptive when you're out with the kids, when you're at a sporting event, when you're at a picnic or anywhere, you just want to keep an eye on what it is that is going on around. And chances are, if you're getting bit by mosquitoes, probably the people next to you are, or your children are, that are playing somewhere else or something. So, you know, I understand I don't always put on repellent either, because if I just showered and now I want to go sit outside, I don't want to put repellent on. So yeah, you want to see what you can do. But there is nothing tested so far that says, you know, if you eat this or drink this or eat a lot of garlic, that it's going to work. They are attracted to stinky feet, so showering is probably not a bad thing.
I have a general question on Once you spray, what's the persistence? How long does it stay in the atmosphere?
Sure. So for sumethrin and synthetic pyrethroids like sumethrin, it's only active while it stays in the cloud. So maybe 20, 30 minutes as it moves through the area. Yep. So once it comes in contact with a surface, it breaks down into well, once it hits the surface, the mosquito can't land on it and die. It breaks down very quickly in sunlight, breaks down very quickly in water. It's an oil-based, but again, it's less than a shot glass, so it doesn't last very long.
How does it kill? Is it a nerve? Or is it does it get into the tracheates or something like that?
No, it's neurotoxin, yep. Yep, it excites the synapses and then it can't close them, so it just gets into an excitatory state and then it kills it.
When you spray your clothing, do you have to wash it in a separate load and then respray it after that? You don't put it in the dryer, you do put it in the dryer? Or?
So there are directions on the label, but no, you don't have to wash it separately, and it lasts about 6 washings or so, depending on, if you're gonna wear it once and keep washing it, it won't last 6 weeks, but if it's something like a sweatshirt or something you might not wash every time you wear it, then it can last for weeks, yeah, and you don't have to wash it separately. I wouldn't recommend washing it with baby clothes, but I think with general clothes, you'll be fine.
What about dogs? So you mentioned the West Nile virus. Is there is the tick medicine they get, is that protecting them?
So there are some tick medicines that protect against mosquito bites, but that's for heartworm.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yep. So,
unless you're taking their heartworm meds, or does that help? Or
it can help, it can't hurt, right,
okay.
right. Mm-hmm.
Can't prevent it.
Can't prevent it, no. So we're constantly doing surveillance. We are going to continue to do surveillance, and we're going to see how the season progresses. It seems like it changes almost daily, so we need to keep up on this. One of the things that Kristen and I are talking about is just technically, the Mass Department of Public Health is not going to reduce risk until the first hard frost, and that could be November before we get our first hard frost. So, you have to, while that doesn't make sense, maybe while you're enjoying your day and it's 55 degrees, that's when common sense things like repellents and long sleeves, long pants will help you make your decision. For West Nile virus, the majority of the cases actually occur in late August, September, and early October. And for EEE, we're now getting into the heart of the year when we get most cases, which was August and September. So the unofficial end of summer, being Labor Day, is actually the official start of most mosquito viruses in human cases, and most of us don't think about that. We've put away the summer and we've moved on to the kids in school and the fall and the pumpkins and all of that stuff, but it's really the chance that you're going to get infected more than likely in the late summer, early fall.
Is that because we're warmer and the atmosphere is colder and they can find us easier than in the summertime when everything's hot and everything's 98.6? And all of a sudden it's 50, we're 98.6. We give off that radiation or carbon dioxide or whatever.
Sure, some of that is true, yep. Also, they have more time to search. So when it's so hot now, they're not going to be out during the day. They'll probably dry up. But in the fall, when it gets cooler and they have more time, because they will come out earlier and earlier as we get an earlier and early sunset, they'll start, so crepuscular, dusk and dawn is usually about an hour before and an hour after. So as we move it forward, we're going to start getting activity much earlier in the morning, and also we're going to get activity much earlier in the evening. So again, don't want anybody to panic, but we definitely want people to know that it's out there and take precautions, and feel free to contact me or the Board of Health. Check our websites, check their websites. As soon as we find something out, especially about the aerial, the map should be up. The last map that was up was, if you can get online, was actually very helpful. You can put your address right in there, 140 Main Street, Easton. It'll show you if you are in the spray block. If you're not in the spray block, then the following day after, if all goes well, Thursday night, Friday afternoon, hopefully by 1 p.m., they'll have a shaded area of what was sprayed that night, and you'll know, was I sprayed, was I not? If not, get prepared for the next night, and then keep doing it until all 390,000 acres are covered.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Nancy White, for making this possible.